So people will come to me and they will say, oh, I want to do Google ads. And I'm like, woo up. Even if someone's got an account, I say to them, let's calculate whether or not you should be doing it in the first place, because there is no point being a charity to Google, or worse still, losing money. There are some rare exceptions, but there's no point losing money if there's no profit to be made, because Google is no longer 10 cents a click or 50 cents a click. You'll be hard pressed to find clicks under $1. And for some industries, lawyers is one example, it's $30 to $100 a click. That is per click. And then we can work through some of the conversion percentages, which are reasonably small. We go through that exercise as a guide to whether or not you should be doing Google ads. And I say to people, as part of that questionnaire, how many leads do you want a month and how many are you expecting to get from Google?
Great to be back for a brand new episode, and this time we will have a guest. Today we are diving into the world of Google Ads with Belinda Irvine, a seasoned expert in the field. Belle, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, ladies.
So Belle, why don't you start off with telling us a bit about yourself and what it is you do as a Google manager, Google Ads manager.
A bit about myself. So I actually had a whole other career before this, which really helped me transition into digital marketing. I had an analyst background where I used to actually prepare and calculate contract information for a health insurance company, amongst other things. So I've spent a lot of my career analysing data, and then transitioned into digital marketing, and that analyst background definitely helped me, be able to crunch the numbers. So today we're going to talk about a whole pile of numbers, and my background certainly has helped. What I do on a daily basis, if you have never heard of a Google Ads manager before, is I basically treat my clients' money as my own, and I have a portfolio of clients that I do their Google Ads for them, because they're either got no interest, no skills, or no time to do it for themselves. So I say to people, if you've got a burning desire to learn it, then go for it. Otherwise, leave it to somebody who lives and breathes it every day. I set up accounts on behalf of clients, help them get their conversion tracking sorted out so that we can measure what it is that we're doing. And then I manage the account on an ongoing basis. So we constantly making changes, and just when you think you might have it right, Google will go and change something on you.
Absolutely, Ben. It's so true, and it's so nice to hear a little bit about your background. So how about if we start with the basics? How do Google Ads actually work?
All right. How do Google Ads actually work? So we get a series of keywords that match what it is that you do. We write ads and we connect them to a website. You don't actually need a website, but it's highly recommended that you have one. Then the hope is that those keywords match the ad copy and resonate with the audience. They then take action by clicking on the ad. It then goes through to the website, and hopefully they like what they see when they get there, and then they convert. And a conversion might be purchasing a pair of shoes. It could be making an appointment with a hairdresser. It could be sending a quote form off to a mowing company to say, I don't really feel like mowing my lawn anymore. Could you please do it for me? So each business has a different outcome in terms of their conversions.
Can I just
anyone who doesn't know, Google Ads are those, I say to people, Google Ads are those really annoying little things that show up at the top of a Google search, because some people don't actually know even what they are. Don't be like my husband. Don't report them. They're there for a reason and they work.
Just when you mentioned keywords, can we just explain what keywords are? Because most people wouldn't even know the term of what a keyword is.
Sure. And look, let's use the example, because I understand your audience. There's a few hairdressers in amongst us. So let's use that as our example today, because it will be really easy for everybody to understand. So a keyword is the phrase or a series of words that someone types into Google and they're looking for a particular service or product. So in the case of a hairdresser, they'll potentially type in hairdressing salon near me. They might type in hairdress hair stylist. They might type in hair color specialist in Brisbane, wherever their location is. There's a pile of different ways that people will put in words to Google looking for a particular service, and we put those words into a Google Ads account, and we say, where these words show up, please show the ad to those people.
Okay.
Thank you. What I was going to ask, when the Google Ads, sorry, I've gone off. I know I had some questions, but for people that haven't understood what Google Ads are, and I think we need to sort of clarify it. What's the biggest misconception that people have about the Google Ads?
Biggest misconception, one big one, which we might get to a little bit later, but I'll touch on it now, is the more money you spend, the more Google will reward you. And that is not correct. You don't get rewarded for buying in bulk or for spending more money. And I'm not going to delve into the real technical deep elements, but just to say quickly that the more you buy, the more costly it actually gets, because we can afford, if you've got a tiny little budget, we can afford to go looking for the cheaper clicks. If you're like my mower guy and you want to dominate an entire corner of a state, then he is fully prepared to spend whatever it takes. And the higher higher up you appear in a Google search, the more costly it will actually be. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions. The second one, and they're not in any particular order, is that Google Ads works for everybody. So people will come to me and they will say, oh, I want to do Google Ads. And I'm like, woo up. Even if someone's got an account, I say to them, let's calculate whether or not you should be doing it in the first place, because there is no point being a charity to Google, or worse still, losing money. There are some rare exceptions, but there's no point losing money if there's no profit to be made, because Google is no longer 10 cents a click or 50 cents a click. You'll be hard pressed to find clicks under $1. And for some industries, lawyers is one example, it's $30 to $100 a click. That is per click. And then we can work through some of the conversion percentages, which are reasonably small. And we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay. We've kind of answered one of our questions there. So what is it? How do you know if the Google Ads are going to be good for you, like if they're working for you?
So I have an entire exercise that I go through, and I call it my viability calculator, where we take information out of the Google Ads planner and information, business metrics from the business owner, plug them into the calculator that I've formulated over the last decade of doing this in business. And it is a bit of a guide. I say to people, this is not a promise. Don't come back to me in 3 months and saying, but we didn't get exactly what was in the calculator, because it's based on information the business is providing me and that Google is giving us. And often I find that the information Google gives us is conservative, and sometimes it can be more expensive in real life. The location, it's also location dependent. Some areas, in my experience, sometimes Sydney is more expensive than, say, Queensland. Not for all industries and not for all products or services, but it does vary depending on the area. So we go through that exercise as a guide to whether or not you should be doing Google Ads. And I give the example that I had a lady come to me who sold little tiny bottles, piccolo bottles of wine. And it's the lesson you learn along the way. I made the assumption that she should have an account because she had an account. And after I got off the phone from her, I realized that she was, in fact, it was costing her $20 to secure a purchase. And she had a 25% profit off an $80 average sale. So it meant that she was handing every bit of her profit to Google and was making no money. I promptly rang her back and said, listen, keep your brand ads on because there's a reason for keeping them on, but you need to turn your other ads off. They're wasting, you're not making any money out of them. Yeah, there is one other reason that we would consider leaving those ads on, but it's probably too much depth.
Too much information. I think a lot of people make the assumption that if they pay for marketing, that it's going to work and they're going to get new clients or there's this big misconception. I know we had it when we first started,
Yes.
when we went on our marketing journey, is that marketing, just because you pay for it doesn't mean it's going to work.
No, that's right. And look, I can give you a decade worth of my best experience and knowledge, and I have an idea of what industries may or may not work. But at the end of the day, I say to clients or potential clients all the time, I don't own Google. And anyone who, and you see it all the time in this industry and various others, like marketing across the board, where we guarantee you 30 leads, or da da da. And I say to people, the only way that a company can make that guarantee is if they're prepared to give you a refund.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
we say, let's do this for 3 months. Let's see how we go. It can be a rocky road in the 3 months because all the best practice in the world, and experience in the world doesn't mean it's going to behave like you think it might, because the geographical area might be slightly different. Or I've had cases where I've had health-based telehealth accounts behave the same in Sydney and Melbourne, but we then had a regional Victorian area and the people in that area behaved completely differently. Like it could have been, you may as well have been an entirely separate company with an entirely different service, yet it was same service, same company, same everything, except for the geographical location.
Thanks, Belle. So you were just talking about the calculating viability.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example of doing that for someone?
Sure thing. I have an example here. I'm going to share my screen just because it's easier. So I hope that those listening can maybe jump on and have a bit of a look.
Which they'll be able to go and do on our website and YouTube channel.
There we go. All right. So we're going to use the hairdresser as an example. And I've de-identified this, but it is actually real information. That's not to say that any hairdressers listening are going to get exactly the same thing. Some of these figures, 50% of these figures are based on the business, and not every business is the same. So let's go through it. In the case, I do start with $1,000 ad spend. That can vary. That's sort of, in my mind, a minimum. There is, generally speaking, because of the average cost per click that you're going to pay and the various conversion rates, there is no point paying someone to manage ads if you're going to have them under $1,000 for the ad spend. And I'll explain further why that's the case, because it's related to the number of conversions you're going to get in a month. In the case of this particular hairdresser, the average cost per click was $4.67, which was very specific. Normally, if I was doing this exercise out of the keyword planner, it wouldn't be this detailed, but I just happen to have this information. We know in the case of this business that their conversion rate was 5.2%, and I've got some benchmarks for different industries, or like I can tell you that service-based businesses, 5%, maybe up to 10%, and I have a few rare exceptions that sit at 15 to 20. They are very much the exception. So I work on 5% if the people or the client doesn't have this information. And this is one of the metrics that businesses frequently don't know because they don't have their conversion tracking set up. So we have to have a bit of a benchmark guess, which is why this is just a guide. So we're saying in this scenario that if the hairdresser spent $1,000 on ads, they're going to get roughly 200 clicks or 215 clicks. That's people going through, clicking on their ad and actually ringing directly off the ad or going through to the website. Off that, for every 100 people that go to the website, roughly 5 are going to make an inquiry. That's where we get the 11 because they've got 200 clicks in the month. And then in the case of this particular hairdresser, and this figure changes according to the different businesses, I've had another hairdresser tell me that their conversion rate was actually 90% if the owner answered the phone. So you've got to be really careful who answers the phone. He said to me this particular day, if I answer the phone, it's 90%. If my junior answers the phone, then it's like 60%. I said to him, well, if you do anything else, please answer the phone.
Yeah, that's extremely interesting.
Yeah. And look, there's just no point. Like it's the job of the website to convert. Only business owners will hold me to how many conversions they're getting. My job is to bring decent traffic based on those keywords through to the website. it is the website's job and the business owner's job to convert their lead into a paying customer. So that's why I'm very, very careful not to take on businesses that have less than average websites. And I encourage them and work with a variety of people to improve websites or rebuild them before we start sending ads to them. So in the case of this hairdresser, they converted 70%, which means out of their 11 potential new customers, they're going to probably get 7 to 8 appointments for the month. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Actually, I'll just leave that there. This is where it gets interesting. You look at the figure of $5,500 and think, gosh, that's like the most expensive hairdresser in the world. That's not the case. What we've done here is, because a hairdresser is a repeating service, and you are going to get the odd person that hates the service and never comes back, and you're going to get what I call lifers who might stay for a decade. So we've worked out for this particular hairdresser that the average they're going to spend over probably the average lifetime of about 3 to 5 years is approximately $5,500. And that's what we have to look at with repeating services like hairdressers and beauticians and mowing guys. Anything that's repeated, we must look at the lifetime value, because if we look at it as a one-off, then you'd never do Google ads, and I'll show you why. The one I skipped over up here, the raw cost of an inquiry is going to be $90.50 approximately. By the time we lose a few, because not everyone's going to make an appointment, it's going to cost us roughly $130 to land that new client. And this is where we must look at that lifetime value, because I've had this exact conversation with a number of hairdressers, and one guy nearly fell off his chair. He's like, $150 to land a new client? Like, that's ridiculous. That's so expensive. And I said to him, yeah, but you're making $5,500 off the person. Are you now, happy to do it now? And he's like, oh, now I get it. So the extra bit here that we've added in is this particular hairdressing salon had a profit margin of 10%, because no point really looking at that $5,500. It's all about the profit.
Yeah.
The profit out of that one client is $550. We're now going to give Google $130 of it to get the client, but we're still going to make $420. So this is where we get to that one final green figure down the bottom that says that we're going to make 300%, 325% on our money. And it's clearly explained. I just tacked this on in the last 12 months because people were interested to know the overall total and benefit of spending $1,000. And in this case, for every $1,000 this salon spends, they're going to come out of it with their $1,000 back and $3,200 profit.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. Just to confirm, Belle, the $1,000 spend is a monthly spend.
That is a monthly spend.
Yeah.
And that was what I would recommend as a minimum. Once we know that the job, once we've got it going and it's working and everybody's happy, the conversions are being measured, things are humming along, the decision then is how many chairs do you have and are they full? And once we prove it's making money, obviously you don't get all your money back in the first month. It's going to take the lifetime of that customer for you to make that profit. That's when we decide, okay, we need more than 7 appointments in a month. In fact, we're chasing, I'm going to make numbers up for the purposes of this, we're chasing 20 new customers for the month. That's when we can play around here and say, right, if that's the case, then we need, roughly speaking, to spend $3,000 on ads. And roughly speaking, that means for this salon, we could reasonably expect 20 appointments. Okay.
Yeah.
But I caveat this and I repeat myself endlessly to say that this is a guide. These are real figures because I have hairdresser clients. But that does not mean that somebody sitting up in Cairns is going to have the same outcome.
Yeah, especially because
Sorry, you go.
Especially because you mentioned before that it's really relevant, like where is that business located, like what you mentioned, Queensland and New South Wales is very, very different. So it's very interesting to see these numbers.
It's also, it depends on the service that the actual hairdresser offers. If they're a specialist blonde, you know, like I'm their actual ideal client, then people will be prepared to travel further than what if it was just a standard hairdresser. Those people are like literally, as we know, there's a hairdresser on every corner in every suburb. So people are less prepared to travel. And that's where it's my job to balance the budget we have with the volume of search in their area or the volume of people who are chasing for a hairdresser and try and keep it as tight as I can so that we have a better chance of those people converting. There's a real thing with Brisbane. I had one hairdresser who was just on the south side of the river, and I had to really make sure that we didn't advertise on the northern side of the river because no one ain't crossing that river, can I tell you? There's a real thing in Brisbane about crossing the river, and I think it's the same in Sydney. So there's just
we have the different sides of the bridge.
This is it. There's just no point me advertising on the north side because, like, there's one service. I live slightly on the north side. I'm only 5 k's from that river, and there's one service I go to on the south side.
Oh my God, that's so interesting. That's like human behavior and customer behavior. It's so interesting. And who would think, you know, like someone who is a Google Ads specialist has to think about this kind of things also when you are putting your keywords or your Google ad together. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and look, I say to people all the time, I spend a lot of my time profiling, and I feel really terrible because I have to make, and I won't mention them now, but I have to make all sorts of assumptions about human behavior. And one that I can speak to is that people come to me and they're like, oh, should we not go, I want to search for, I probably should have come up with an example before now, but they come up with more general keywords. So my job, if you think about a funnel, is to make sure that we buy the keywords that are very, very specific. We don't want new hairstyles because that's probably Pinterest and a pile of pretty pictures. What we need is the person saying hairdresser near me. Yeah. And even to the point where I've made assumptions because of budgets in previous hairdressing accounts where we excluded haircuts.
Yeah.
Because that's probably my husband looking for a $20 haircut, not me who's looking for blonde and whatever, and I know it's not going to be a $50 job. So we very much have to look for those transactional purchasing related keywords, not the I want a new hairstyle and I'm doing research that's right up here.
And I think it's really important that these conversations that we're having, that people have them with whoever they're working with as a Google Ads expert or any kind of marketing, is that you need to be able to look for someone like yourself that is open, honest, transparent, and is going to give you the bad news. You know, like I think a lot of people get taken for a ride because they're promised everything and then it can't be delivered. So being able to like have a bit of knowledge about, you know, like that calculator that you've made is an amazing tool that, you know, it just gets to the crux of it. And sometimes it's really good news and sometimes it's heartbreaking news. Like even when it was ours, when we had you do ours and we're just like, oh my God, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, that's it. And look, I've only ever had one lady take offense. You can go and read my 1-star review. Go and have a giggle to yourself reading my 1-star review on my Google's. Most people in my list of verbal feedback via email, via my Google reviews, really appreciate the no nonsense. Like honestly, one of the big reasons it's just too way stressful for me. If I didn't calculate that viability on the way in, and we get 2 months into it and you're not getting any conversions, sure as eggs, you're going to be cranky, you're going to be stressed, you're going to be sending me emails at midnight, being all sorts of, you know, annoyed. And I'm going to be stressed trying to get the conversions, and then the relationship's not going to end well. So I say to people who have ads running and or are thinking about doing ads, if your agency or person didn't, at least they may not have a brightly coloured red and yellow calculator, but if they didn't even have a conversation with you about whether or not you should be doing ads, or if they're not talking to you about your ROI and whether you're making money, even if there's some industries where it's really hard to calculate, but if they're not even having those conversations, then for me, that is one of the biggest red flags. They're just churning and burning and just going through the motions to to take your money, basically.
Yeah, and we experienced exactly the same before we ended up contacting with you. You know, we spent on Google Ads, and it was someone who was a really well-known expert, and we never had this conversation. We never had the transparency. We kept going for a while, and we did not see results. And then we ended up with you. You showed us the calculator, and you gave us the not so shiny and sugar-coated news that, well, for us, it's never going to work. And the one thing that I wanted to go back to, you know, like when you are saying buying keywords, you know, like what do you mean by that? Because most of the people, they won't understand when you say, you know, like make sure you're buying. What is it?
Okay, so there is a bit of a misconception out there, or a lack of sort of knowledge around when do you get charged by Google. So we've referred to ad spend a number of times. With standard search ads, there is some exceptions, but for the businesses we're talking to, for a standard search ad, you pay when the person clicks. So we talked about those keywords going into the account and then it matching with the ad copy. When someone types in hairdresser near me and then they click on our ad, that's when we pay.
Okay. Yeah.
So when I talk about buying keywords, it's the words I have in the account that I'm prepared to spend money on. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much for clarifying that. How about if we do another example, like say a financial planner?
And here's one I had earlier. All right, let's get rid of this one. All right. This is a good example because this shows I'm gonna revert back to something here. All right, so this is a real life example. Again, I've de-identified it. This came to me. I have a number of different referral partners, marketing companies, marketing strategists, agencies, website developers who refer me work. I 100% just do Google Ads, and I work with a pile of people who don't do Google Ads and they do everything else. So this was sent to me. A friend of mine said, "Hey, Belle, can you have a look at this? This guy's complaining to me. He's a client. He's doing Google Ads with another provider. But can you have a look at his account? Because he's saying that he's not getting any conversions and he's not real happy." I'm like, okay, no worries. So these are his figures. And we ran through it. He was spending $1,500 on ads. This shows you that different industries cost different amounts of money. Tradies, lawyers, accountants, there'd be plenty of others, real estate, reasonably expensive for Google Ads because over the last however long Google Ads has been running, over 20 years, those industries have worked out that it works well for them. They've all jumped in and they've all driven the price up because it's effectively an auction. So financial planning, $20. We estimated, because he did not have conversion tracking, that his conversion rate would be 5%. I actually think it could be lower because of the competitiveness in his industry. And what that meant is that he was going to get roughly 3 to 4 inquiries for the month. And then here comes the challenge. So it's going to cost him roughly $400 just to get an inquiry.
Wow.
But because people shop around for financial planners, because it's a big decision and it's a lot of money, he converted 10%. And because his conversion rate was so low, it meant out of the 3 to 4 inquiries that he was getting, that he was not even converting 1 per month. Hence the reason I got the phone call. So he had great money, great profit. Like when he does land a client, he gets it. He turns over $17,000. They're worth that to him. His profit's bigger than a hairdressing salon at 35%. So his profit's roughly $6,000 per client. And the maths of this actually works. It's profitable for him. The problem we have with him is this 10% versus what it's costing up here. And so I said to him, look, I'll be very happy to work on your account. I understand you have a contract, so you've got to see that through. But I actually don't want you to come back to me until you have a budget of about $5,000. Because the last thing I want is a client not to land a new customer at least every month.
Wow.
That's the name of the game. There's money in this. It's all totally fine. But I want to be able to get him some, and keeping in mind, this is a guide. Like we might not get 12, we might get 8, or we could get 6 1 month and 15 the next. We need some room to move in here, and the ability to get some conversions. Because of the way that the bidding works these days, Google works on getting conversions and then goes and looks for more of the same. And if you're only getting, like, let's go back to the 1,500, if you're only getting 3, it's very easy to go to 1 or potentially none. So I said to him, when you've got $5,000 to spend, come back to me, because then you're going to get sort of 10 to 15 inquiries, and you're at least going to land one of them.
Yeah, and this is what we really loved about you when we ended up finding you, that complete clarity and transparency. You actually did the exercise with us. We were number crunching and everything, because we just wanted to make sure, like we squeeze out everything what we can from the numbers, and we went from every single different angles, and you tried everything, and you still told to us, well, it's just not going to work. But it's just really amazing to know that, that this calculator is going to give you a complete clarity, even if you just need to spend a little bit more money to get result, or if it's not going to work whatsoever.
Yeah, it's also about expectations with either of, I've closed it down now, but with either of these two examples, because the next thing, here it is here, the next thing I have is that I send to new clients, and I even tell them it's coming. Like, it's not a surprise when they get it. I have a questionnaire, and I say to people, as part of that questionnaire, how many leads do you want a month, and how many are you expecting to get from Google? And it is, like, I tell them it's coming, but it is designed to be a little bit of a test to see whether they understand. Because in this case, well, both of these cases, it's interesting that you've got to spend $5,000 as a financial planner to get roughly the same amount of conversions as what a hairdresser does for $1,000. But you're talking 10 to, say, 15 for both of them. The amount of people in that questionnaire who say, oh, I'm expecting to get 50 and I want 30 of them to come from Google Ads. So that's literally when I pick up the phone and say, hey, listen, do you remember the calculator, the bright red and yellow one? Like, it's the most brightest, hideous colors, but people remember it. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, right, remember, for your $1,000, roughly 10. You are not going to get 30. And so that is just, again, about setting those expectations on the way in, because Google Ads is not 10 cents anymore. And I don't want you cranky in 2 to 3 months where you're like, this is costing me a fortune. I'm like, yep. And remember, we went through it.
Yes.
So I've got a question. A lot of smaller businesses and that they've only just sort of starting out with Google Ads, and this is like a big conversation for someone that's new. What would be the first steps that you would have someone do if they were thinking about running Google Ads?
Okay, so the first step has got nothing to do with Google Ads. If you're a new business and you have no budget to do anything, or you have a tiny little budget, it's going to cost you less than $1,000. I don't care if you do no paid advertising. I want you to set up your conversion tracking, because
okay, so what's that?
So conversion track. So everyone, well, not everyone. I shouldn't say that either. I was going to say a decent website developer will give you Google Analytics. There's plenty who won't, right? So if you don't have Google Analytics, then don't even ask your website developer. Just get somebody who can do conversion tracking. And what that is and if you do have Google Analytics, what you probably have is just the basics of an account that tells you how many people are coming to your website, what countries they're coming from, what pages they're going to, how long they spend on your website, tells you all this demographics, which is really amazing. But what it doesn't tell you, because it's more complicated to set up, is it doesn't tell you how many people made a booking, how many people did quote forms. What it will never tell you is actually the phone calls. That's a bit of a challenging one, but there's a pile of different, if you sell red, I always give the example of red shoes. If you sell shoes, then it's going to tell you how many purchases you had and how much money was associated with it. And look, I don't think, I've probably had 3 clients, and they were big multi-million-dollar companies that actually had that conversion tracking component set up when they came to me. And I've had it plenty of times where even the big ones that think they have it set up, it's set up wrong or incorrect.
Right.
So I would highly recommend getting that conversion tracking set up. When we set it up for Google Ads, we set it up in Google Ads and in Google Analytics, because if something's going to break, it's most likely going to be that, due to website updates and changes to websites and the like. So if something does happen in Google Ads, we can reference back to Google Analytics. The other big thing is that for some of the junior burger businesses that come just getting their head around marketing and how things work, and they're like, oh, I understand from my industry that Google Ads will work for me. I'm like, yes. And then 3 months down the track, they'll be like, so Belle, you know how come I can see, I can see the conversions in Google Ads, and like I can see how many people are making a booking at my salon. I'm like, yep. They're like, how many are coming from socials? And that's when I can say, remember, we set up that conversion tracking right from the beginning. Let me go and show you where to find it in Google Analytics. So it tells them not just for Google Ads how many conversions they're getting, but for all of their sources, SEO, the organic stuff, social media, people directly, all the different places that people can come from. It will show you how many appointments or quote forms or whatever your thing is, how many are coming through according to the platform that they came through from. So that would be the first thing that I would do. And even if it's 6 or 12 months down the track before you engage a professional to do some paid ads or anything else, at least you're measuring things right from the get-go.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. And I'd really like to hear from our audience, like if you are working with Google Ads or an agency, like did your current agency chat with you about the Google Ads viability? And if you want to share your experience and if you have any question with us, you can share those questions with us on our social media, or even you can drop us an email. It would be very interesting to hear other business owners, salon owners' experience with Google Ads agencies.
Yeah, be good to hear what people have said, because we were one of those that we came to. I don't think we had Google Analytics or had any understanding. So, Belle, just to finish it off, any final thoughts specifically for hair and beauty salon owners about Google Ads? So we've got the conversion tracking set up, so you understand.
Yeah, probably the final thought is the amount of, and this is why I'll get rid of this one now. This is why I've highlighted these in red. This one, an agent, hairdresser can be forgiven for not knowing, because if you're not measuring your conversions, then you won't know what your conversion rate is. There's some manual ways of calculating, but it's not fun. So that one we can estimate. What I would really encourage business owners to know is these 3 figures. And I say to people, for every 10 phone calls you get, how many people book in? And I don't care if you record that for a day or a week on a piece of paper beside the phone. Get a figure for every 10, like mark off the phone calls you get. How many appointments did I get? It can literally be a tally, and that gives you your conversion rate within the business after I hand you the lead. Calculate, and the way to do this is to add up your turnover for however long you've had your business, if you can, but at least probably 2 to 3 years. Add up how much money you've made and divide it by the number of clients, not the number of appointments, but the number of people. And one of the best ways to find the people in a database is their mobile number, because it's fairly unique and it doesn't regularly change. So we're going to add up the total turnover for the year or for the couple of years, and we're going to divide it by the number of people. That will give you your lifetime value. And then as a business owner, I am absolutely astounded at the amount of people who do not know how much profit they have in their business. So yeah, not just for Google Ads, but for running a business generally, these 3 figures are absolutely vital. So if you're new, You can totally be forgiven for not knowing that that's a thing you should know about. Write those 3 things down, stick it on the wall, and aim towards it over time. If you have those metrics, then you can make really good decisions.
Sorry, we'll just restate what those things are. So one is the new customer acquired. So that's
so
the
that's
phone call one.
I'm going to change this for the purpose of this conversation. So that's the business conversion rate. That's how many new appointments do you get if you got 10 phone calls, how many would book in? If 7 book in, then your conversion rate is 70%.
So 10 phone calls of new clients. So 10, not just 10 phone, out of all the phone calls of the day, how many new ones and how many book in?
Yeah, that's it. So not the ones that come all the time. You're right. We have to distinguish between them. The second one is lifetime value. Now, if you're a brand new business who's only been operating for less than a year, you won't have that figure yet, or you will, but it'll be really small. And then the margin. So I'm going to change this for these businesses. The business margin or business profit margin. After all of your expenses and after tax and after all of the things, how much profit is in your business?
Yeah.
And that comes back to something that we're always saying to people is that to understand it, and to improve it, you need to track it. And to be able to grow your business, you need to know these numbers from every angle. And I think that's the one thing that a lot of business owners shy away from, is that they're not number nerds like us that love all the data, or that they are once they do start loving the data once they understand what the data can do for them. So
and sometimes it's just a case of actually having had no exposure and don't even know that they should, have never heard the term average lifetime value or of their customers. It's a concept they may have never come across. And I see light bulbs go off when I explain this to people and say, look, you're totally fine that you don't know this stuff, but now you do. It's your job to start keeping an eye on it and know your figures. My mower guy, oh my gosh, you can go to my website and have a look at his case study. That man knows his figures in his sleep.
Yeah.
It was so easy to do his case study because I was like, right, what's the average lifetime value? It's like $2,800 bill, and banged it out just like that. Because he knows his margins, he knows his conversion rates. He's like, so I've designed a new page and I think it's going to be better for conversion. Can we try that out? I'm like, yes, we can, Dylan. Yes, we can.
Yeah. And very lucky. Yeah, and it's very lucky when someone is so numbers driven and, a very logical way of thinking. But say, for hairdressers and beauty therapists, we are creative people. So the numbers are sometimes we cannot even imagine what we should measure, and not even, how we should call them.
And in that case, I would just say my final kind of point that's just come to me is that you can't just throw money at a person or a thing and then disappear. Yeah. So my big sister lecture to potential new clients is to say that in the first instance, we're going to chat a lot, or there'll be a number of emails that will come your way. Your ads will be as good as your participation. I am not sitting in your salon. I am not sitting in your office. I can learn about you from your website. I can learn about you from various other documents, but I don't need you to spend 8 hours a day or even 1 hour a day on this. But if I send you an email, if I ask you a question, I need your participation. If I recommend to you that you need to make XYZ changes to your website, then it's for a good reason. So I had a client once who attended a 30-minute meeting in the discovery call type phase. Never attended another. It was through a marketing consultant, but never attended another meeting. Full stop. Amen. Wasn't willing to make an offer. Wasn't willing to spend an appropriate amount of money for the industry. It was hard going, and it was like pulling teeth. And so I say to people, your ads will be as good as your participation.
And I think we need to manage just on that. Final thought is the expectation that it doesn't just work straight away. Just because you turned them on and you've put money to it, it doesn't just
Look, some can.
magic.
I've had some accounts that just like bingo from the 24 hours after you turn them on, your first conversion.
Yeah.
Do I tell people about that? No, I don't, because it can take time, and it can take time to optimize the account and work out what's working and pause the things that aren't working. The other misconception about Google Ads is that leads come consistently, and they do for some businesses, but they don't for others. You can get 4 leads in a week and then none for a week. And that's something that I know, but I had actually forgotten to tell people because I just knew it to be true and didn't understand that clients didn't realize that until you get the odd cranky email where they're like, I haven't heard anything for a week. And I'm like, okay, just letting you know that Google doesn't send you 3 a week because you're spending a certain amount of money.
Yes. And I think it's really just to close with this thought. It's people need to understand that you work with data what they provide, and you do your magic, and your knowledge is the knowledge what you always use. But if the data is not right, or if they don't spend time to fill out that questionnaire what you're sending out, and they don't spend time to get the accurate data, you are going to start to work with wrong data, and you're going to deliver your result based on that data. So it's very important that they have to put their 50% into the success also.
Yeah, and the more that a business, like I say to business owners when they're filling out that questionnaire, I don't need a 5-page novel. I need bullet points. Tell me about your business. The only way I'm going to learn about your points of difference, what makes you special, what I can sell you in your Google Ads, is if you tell me. You know, are you a blonde specialist, or do you specialize in red-headed people, or whatever your thing is that you happen to do? I need to know about it. Unless it's on your website, I'm not going to know.
Absolutely. And thank you, Belle. And for our listeners, what I wanted to say, just be sure to check out the resources what Belinda mentioned, and you freely and we truly can recommend her to consider her services if you are looking for or if you are looking to boost your business with Google Ads. And we will leave you a link below how you can contact to Belinda.
And remember, for next podcast, please reach out with your topic requests, and feel free to follow us on our social media platforms. Adri, you will need to share our socials so I don't ham them up as usual.
Yes, our handles are at FocusGDT in all platforms. And if you like to know what's the bottleneck holding your business back from the growth you desire, you can head to our website. We're going to put the link here, and you can fill out the quiz, and that's going to get you started. And thanks for tuning in, and we will see you in next time in our podcast Beyond the Mirror.